record it. So now I'm recording now. So for today, the first theme is talking about better conversations. So Camilla was one of the first people I interviewed, Camilla Borrevik. Camilla is Norwegian and she's an anthropologist. And I talk about Camilla a lot because I think the interview I did with her really stuck with me. And she works with the Pacific Islands, the small Pacific Island states, on climate change. And she's going to be talking to us about the different ways of talking about climate change. And then Meredith, who I interviewed about 6 weeks or so ago, is a transformational coach who has worked with one of the biggest financial institutions in the US, I think you call it a Fortune 50, about how to change communication within that organization so that people are having better conversations, and how that's changed the organization. And then Maria Laura is a singer, actress, writer, composer, dancer, I think you'd say artist, and she has got something which we don't know when it's going to come, but it's a bit of a surprise, and it's, I think, going to make this a very special event. What I wanted to do is to have Meredith and Camilla speak for, say, 10, 15 minutes each. And then the idea was just to open it up. So it's not for questions necessarily. It could be for questions. It could just be for your reactions. It could be for your own stories. And the idea is to have just to listen to what they're saying and see what it brings up for you, and then share what it brings up for you and what it brings up for all of us about how we can have better conversations. So I'm recording, and I will be putting this on my website. So if anyone wants to have a look at it later or wants to direct it to anyone, that's where it'll be. Meredith, do you want to kick off?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you. I'd like to start by, expressing my deep gratitude to you, Cecilia, for your vision and work in bringing together, a circle of women to hold and encourage and to metabolize a bigger vision for the world, and giving voice to the different ways in which we all contribute to that, right? It's an exquisite privilege to be with all of you today and to be in this conversation about how we can have better conversations. And it's a big topic, and I'm sure we'll just touch the surface of it in our time together. And I'm going to try to keep my ramblings brief because I'm really eager to hear from Camilla and her story about the work she's doing, and also to hear from you all. So I apologize in advance if I, wander a little bit, but I'm gonna try to stay focused here. And I guess I want to start by saying that what an extraordinary time it is to be a human being on this planet, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree? This is, and it's an extraordinary time to be a woman on this planet. I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done and a long way to go, a lot of progress to be made, but I think that, the feminine energy is rising to really support healing and nurturing and rebalancing of our world that's already sort of underway to create a more kind, loving, tender world. And so there's a lot of shifting going on at both the individual and the collective level, and old belief systems and dehumanizing patterns of being and thinking and relating are unraveling, and this is creating a lot of disruption, and it's bumpy and it's intense sometimes. And so during this period, this time of deconstruction, I think it's really important that we not give attention to what is collapsing, but we give our attention to holding a vision for the new world we want to create together. And keeping our inner radio dials tuned to, the higher frequencies of love and light and compassion and joy and forgiveness, gratitude, etc. As we, continue to make this remarkable, transition, I think, or we're at this turning point for humanity. At least that's what it feels like for me. So let's talk a little bit about how we might go about rehumanizing and healing organizations, since that was the topic that Cecilia actually wanted me to speak on. I'll just start by saying, personally, I'm very passionate about helping individuals and organizations to transform. And I do think that that's kind of a lofty term, transformation. People are probably sometimes sick of hearing it, but really it's about, how can we continue to learn and grow and become more conscious, aware human beings and organizations. And I think as part of this shift that's underway on the planet, that organizations, which are really a collection of people, are realizing that a more collective approach is needed to really survive and thrive in this volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world, and one that's increasingly so. So there's an acronym VUCA, if you're familiar with it, that kind of describes this environment that we're in. And so I was thinking about this and I was like, well, what's at the heart of this? So for me, at the heart of a more collective approach is building relationships. And at the heart of building relationships is creating more meaningful connections. And at the heart of creating more meaningful connections is engaging in better and more generative conversations. Right? But I think in many organizations, and I don't know if this is true for your organization or not, but many organizations don't really focus on the type of soft skills needed to have, cultures of partnership and collaboration. Employees are very commonly, at least in the US, compensated, promoted, and rewarded for their individual performance and the knowledge they possess, right? And not their ability so much to play well in the sandbox with other people. But again, I think that they're recognizing that construct is not enabling them to face the challenges of the future. So I wanted to just share a little bit about some, I think, pretty fascinating work I did with a risk management division of this very large and systemically important financial institution that Cecilia mentioned, that will go nameless for now, to protect the names of the innocent. What is that little line that they say in the movies, to protect whatever? So I would just start by describing this organization, this division within this large financial institution, as a collegial group of very bright men and women. They probably had the highest concentration of PhDs in the organization. They were highly analytical. We like to call them quant jocks. They're good at math. I'm not. They were. Their collective IQ made them like the intellectual powerhouse of the company. And individually and collectively, they strongly identified as experts, as subject matter experts, right? But they didn't work well together, and they didn't work well with others in their organization. And they had the lowest employee engagement scores in the company. And this contributed to higher turnover. They operated in a very siloed way. Information didn't cascade well throughout the organization, either horizontally or vertically. Their interactions with their business partners were contentious and frustrating. And there was described as a very low level of trust among staff, managers, and leaders in this organization. So instead of being viewed as valuable partners and trusted advisors to the business, they were really seen as obstacles to getting things done. So what we notice is that while expertise is a good thing, when we identify too strongly as an expert, it can stifle our ability to have more of an open learner's mindset, right? And we can be very uncomfortable with not having an answer, or worse, having the wrong answer, right? We tend to defend a position or a viewpoint, and rather than being curious about what other people think, right? And we may see different opinions or beliefs as a threat to our mastery of a certain domain. And so we'll be perhaps less inclined to seek different perspectives that might challenge that belief system. And when we have an organizational culture that compensates and promotes and rewards people based on this expertise, right? Collaboration, partnership skills will take a back seat. So at the heart of this organizational transformation work, which we called, the program we named it was called The Power of Partnerships, right? And at the heart of it was helping the organization, this risk management division, create new ways of interacting and working together. And so there was, as part of this program, a very large skill building component. We ran over 100 different sessions, and we delivered this program to every employee, from the chief risk officer to the administrative assistant staff. Everyone in the organization went through the program. But it went beyond teaching new skills. It was really about helping them put these, after we taught the skills, putting these new partnership behaviors into practice to create breakthroughs in their relationships. And it was to help their culture shift from a sort of a gotcha mentality to a got your back mentality. And so as part of this holistic program, we introduced several models and tools and practices, and a few that they found most helpful. I'll just share a couple of examples, and I just want to keep an eye. I'm doing all right on time, Cecilia?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You may or may not have heard of some of these, but the SCARF model. Is anybody familiar with the SCARF model? Well, it shows how the human brain has this core intrinsic need around status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And when and the presence or absence of those will activate threat reward states for an employee, right? And that will affect their ability to either show up with openness or perhaps more in a retreating defensive posture, right? We introduced them to this wonderful learner-judger model about how they can shift from engaging with a judger's mindset into what's, a judger's mindset of like, what's wrong with this, to a learner mindset, which is what's the opportunity, right? Subtle shift, but very, very important. We taught them humble inquiry, how to ask meaningful, powerful questions, to and listen without already predetermining what the answer is, right? So we taught them not only how to ask powerful questions, but how to actively listen. And this was actually a topic that they said they wanted more on. They wanted to learn. They loved hearing about how to ask more powerful questions in a curious manner, but they really felt they had a gap in how to be good listeners, which I thought was fascinating. We had them do coffee chats where they had to reach out to a key stakeholder, set up a meeting, a 30-minute meeting, and engage them in some curious, humble inquiry type questions about how they could work more effectively together. That was a very powerful practice that became kind of became part of the organizational culture. we put them in peer coaching circles, facilitated circles. They met once a month for 6 months, and they helped each other to use these tools to solve problems and to work together collaboratively. And it was amazing how they found all of these common types of problems that they were all facing, and they didn't realize it, right? So someone would bring up a problem and another person would be like, oh my gosh, I've had that same experience. And so they were creating new ways of relating, and they were also becoming resources for one another. And then we spent a lot of time sharing success stories, so that these practices, the successes, and even sometimes maybe the epic fails, we could highlight them, so that it was a way of really making it concrete for others across the organization, but how these practices can really help you achieve more effective results and build trust and create real breakthroughs in relationships that may have been really struggling. So
what were the effects on the organization?
So some of the aspects, so in the organization after the first year, we saw measurable improvement in critical behavior scores. Okay, and we also saw measurable improvement in our employee engagement scores as well. We went from being the bottom to almost much closer to the top. So a significant jump in that. And we got great feedback from participants in the program, and also from the business partners who were finding the collaboration to they were actually building trust and had really incredibly positive experiences that were quite different than what they had before. So they were noticeably different. And one of my favorite stories was the realization by a mid-level leader who was nearing the end of his career. He was highly analytical, and he said that he had this epiphany during the program. He said, I've spent most of my career building my technical expertise and knowledge, but I've realized through this program that it's really about the relationships. And another participant said, the power of partnerships is really about the power of possibility, right? So without going any further along with that, I wanted to give you a taste of some of the things that we utilized in this program, but really speaking to the importance of creating relationships in organizations. And I think that was one of the key learnings, and one of the key takeaways from the people that went through it was how they had spent so much of their time and effort building their technical skills, and really didn't invest in the skill sets needed to build trust, to engage in partnerships, to collaborate, and the profound shift that occurred in not only their ability to do their jobs, but how they felt about the jobs that they were doing and their role in the organization. And going from that me mindset to more of a we mindset, right? A collective approach, the connection that created for folks.
And I can imagine that they were also just happier.
They were happier.
They were happy. The people working were happy.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you, Meredith.
So thank you for listening to all of that.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words at the beginning too. Camilla, do you want to jump in?
Oh yeah, thank you, Meredith. This was great, and I can see why Cecilia, you wanted to put us together, because I think it could probably what do you say? It works very well together with maybe my case example as well. It's more of a case example, but also what you're talking about Meredith with the expert and as a young academic, I definitely see a lot of the same issues and a lot of, I recognize the way of communicating and the way of building and non-building relationships with each other. Although maybe a little bit different from coming from anthropology, and sort of social relations are our main issue, or main focus rather. So yeah, maybe I can start by telling a little bit about me and my background as a social anthropologist. I know that maybe some don't know what that is really, an anthropologist. It really is the study of human societies. We base our research on ethnographic fieldwork. So that means that we spend a lot of time in one place to do research and to learn about this phenomena that we are looking closer at. And I've been researching social and political consequences of climate change in the Pacific. I finished my PhD in 2019, and I've mainly explored how Pacific countries deal with climate change, not only as an environmental issue, but also as, or mostly as a political and social issue on local, regional, and international levels. So this has included participating in the climate negotiations as part of the Republic of Palau, which is a small island state in the north of Pacific. So part of the Palau's delegation since 2015. And I don't know how much you know about the global climate negotiations, but I'll just quickly give some backgrounds as well. And the negotiations are really for countries that have ratified the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, so what's called the UNFCCC. And these countries come together every year in what's called the Conference of the Parties, what's called often known as COP. And this COP negotiation, they measure the progress made by countries in achieving the objective of this UNFCCC, the convention. Oh, I'm sorry. So they measure the progress made to achieve sorry.
You're a busy woman, Camilla.
My computer is a bit of a restart. Okay. Yeah, so where was I? So the COPs, they measure the progress globally in where we are at, and basically cutting emissions, greenhouse gas emissions globally. And these climate negotiations, they're huge events. So there are thousands of people attending, and countries are represented, NGOs, all kinds of people are at these meetings. But there are also very particular events, so with very particular bureaucratic systems, with a very particular negotiation language that has to be, you have to learn the language, particular ways of doing, acting. So all in all, it's a particular culture, right? So what in anthropology we would say these meetings have very particular social forms. And this is part of a point that I want to make in talking now, is that this established UN system and communication form is often considered as a neutral language. It's a bureaucratic process, so therefore it's a sort of a neutral or a language in between all these different cultures. But my point is that, and so many other points, others have made this point as well, it's really not, it's many have shown how what is a technocratic approach and representation in reality is, it's really reducing the complexity of social reality, especially when it comes to complex issues like climate change, into, and Meredith mentioned the word translate or transform, and it transformed this these social realities, say, for example, how a lived reality of the Pacific Islands transforms it into these very set negotiation language and forms of knowledge that are fit for the purpose of the UN setting. And so a Pacific Island response to this that I want to talk about is there's really been a greater call for contextualizing climate change impacts, what it means from a local point of view or regional Pacific point of view, and also that this negotiation format and being so huge and with this ways of doing and social form is really not fit for purpose, especially not for Pacific delegations. There are long days, the amount of meetings that you have to run in between. It's just really, it's negotiation by exhaustion. I've heard it explained as or described as. So there are some huge challenges in this form. And my example is from 2017 when Fiji held the presidency of the 23rd Conference of the Parties, so COP23. And Fiji's presidency was really the first ever Pacific COP or Pacific organized COP, even though it was held in Bonn in Germany. Fiji still held the presidency. And the whole vision of this meeting was to highlight the particular challenges that climate change presents to Fiji and other island countries. You know, they're known as the forefront of climate change impacts. And also what they were saying and quoting, to infuse COP23 with the Fijian Bula spirit of inclusiveness and promoting the Pacific concept of Talanoa. And Talanoa is a Pacific form of oral communication between people. And it really means to talk and to discuss and to tell stories. And storytelling is a very important way of sharing knowledge in the Pacific. And to build relationships based on respect and empathy. So Talanoa is really a Pacific framework and a cultural concept of communicating and connecting. It can be either formal or informal. So it can, as in communities and villages or in government departments. But really, the highlight is a respectful way of discussing and sharing knowledge. So what the Fiji presidency did in COP23 in the climate negotiations was to introduce this concept of the Talanoa as a formal speaking forum through what was called the Talanoa Dialogue. And the aim of the Talanoa Dialogue was to increase countries' ambitions to reduce emissions under the Paris Agreement by having an inclusive, non-confrontational space for collective problem solving where relationships can be established. So the focus was entirely on solutions and open communication. And the way that they did this was really through three very sort of straightforward questions, which were where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we get there? And so how they did this, it was really a 3 steps. So the first was a sort of a global call for submissions, open for everyone. So this is sort of the standard, always UNFCCC, so you do your submissions, right? And they gathered that, but it was, they went out pretty wide and opened it up for everyone, just not countries, but all interested parties. And second, they also organized several, so from 2017, from the start to 2018, so this went on for a year. They organized several in-person Talanoa sessions or discussions, also open for all, where you could participate. You could also follow online. And the way they did this was completely in a contrast from what the normal UNFCCC negotiation set up, where you sit behind your country sign. They were all sitting in a circle, a much smaller group, sharing, and in front of them there was this Fijian mat. We've met with different cultural items in between them, and the focus was really just to have this open space to discuss these 3 questions and to share stories. This is a big thing, just share stories, and everybody sort of respectfully listen each other out. So just a storytelling session to answer these questions. And then third, they were also encouraging all these different regional and national talanoas around the world to discuss these questions. They also had one in Norway. I didn't participate. I'm not sure how successful it was, but just getting that, getting Norwegians to sit in a circle and talk about these global major issues and trying to connect that on a local level like that is a good, it's a pretty good initiative and result. Other results of introducing the Talanoa dialect, and this was really a highlight, which was I remember a news article that said that finally negotiators are talking together like people. They dropped the phrases and the ways of formal talking, but they were just sitting, sharing stories. And it's a really big contrast to these existing UN forms of meeting procedures at the COP. It's really, it's sharing emotions as well as ideas and experiences through storytelling, which is a complete contrast. So obviously for Pacific Islanders, this was hard work, and it was hard work for years. I mean, getting to that point where Fiji actually got the presidency role. But also to make it on that level, to introducing the Talanoa on that level. Now, we can discuss how much is lost maybe from taking an indigenous concept like that and a method and introducing into it a concept like that, if people internalize or not, if they really understand it. But either way, it really showed a specific form of knowledge sharing. And how they could connect their local issues with this global discussion, really, which is pretty valuable. And it shows the value of different cultural ways of communicating, which obviously as an anthropologist, I'm always fronting and trying to understand the different ways people are communicating and why they're doing so. And it also provides an example to maybe rethink the way that negotiations are set up. So the protocols and the procedures, it doesn't need to be that set up and challenge the established system, which, it's a big task, but it might be a step forward to do so. And this idea of maybe just talking, it might seem obvious, but the idea of sharing stories on that level is really is innovative and at least within that space. So they're really making these Pacific climate change stories and place-based knowledge relevant in these huge climate regime system. Fiji, as a final sort of note, it was also a way for Fiji to take ownership of the process, and in those kinds of fora, obviously taking ownership of the process is also controlling the outcome. So that also has a say, right? It's a response to not feeling heard, maybe, as small island developing states. They've often felt like they were on the losing end of the climate negotiations. And it shows agency, but it also, shows how through this Talanoa dialogue and the Fiji presidency at large, it was an opportunity to influence decisions that directly affects the future of Pacific Islands, which is so important. And yeah, I think finally it's a response to a system that values a certain kind of expertise and communicating style. So as Meredith was telling as well, and that's why I think our examples fit so well together as well. You really there's this move to try to change change the whole system of communicating, and that's a big task. But also to rethink how we do things and how we share knowledge and speak to each other. And yeah, as both Cecilia and Meredith, I think it's an example of how to humanize and to create that meaningful connection from other people's experience. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Camilla. I've got comments and questions for both of you, but I think I'm just going to be quiet for the moment and let other people jump in, just respond, see if that corresponds to your experiences, if stories are coming up, if you've got stories that are coming up.
I would love to just say thank you both so much. And what I really love as listening to both of you, there was this really, I'm guessing unplanned, but maybe it was planned, synchronicity in the idea of how very often, especially in big structures and big organizations, the idea or the possibility of just thinking outside the box and doing something in a different way, it's like we even forget that that is even a possibility. Like we get so used to the structure of the way that we deal with interpersonal relationships in a corporation, or the way that they deal with at the COP summit, they have the way they've done it for years, right? And when both of you were speaking, I just thought that's extremely powerful. Like if everybody just took a minute to say, what if we came at this from a totally new and different angle? Like what could we discover? And so I just wanted to comment and say that was really powerful for me, that just that spark of an idea can make really big change. So thank you both for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Perdita.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's that just taking a step back and questioning why we're doing what we're doing, or why do we, like Meredith was talking about, why do we value expert knowledge the way that we value? I mean, bureaucratic negotiation language is also a kind of an expert knowledge, right? Or the form that it's presented in.
And I would just add that what we discovered is sometimes people just needed permission to step outside of the status quo. There is this sort of this unspoken rules of engagement that employees assume exists, and they're afraid to push against it. And then leaders separately are complaining, why aren't their employees being more innovative? And it's like, well, because they don't feel like they have permission to, step outside their swim lane or, push against the status quo.
It's amazing what just a little curiosity can do on any side, right? Even if the employees were just like, I'm just curious, could we do this, for example? So yeah, it's really, really, really interesting. And again, just so wonderful that both of you, kind of had that inspiration and all that came out of it. It's really, really interesting.
Anyone else?
Yeah. I wanted to jump into, I wanted to thank you both as well for sharing. And I think for me, something that stuck out that, I've found in my career and in professional settings is this kind of fear of emotion and this desire, this need for, at least in formal and corporate settings, to kind of steer away from that and somehow just stay very cold and very on point, and to not let that kind of emotional story component kind of come in. But in fact, that's what ends up motivating us to change and to transform and to as you know, think outside the box, to think differently. If we're just continuing to exist in the same space and communicate in the same way and adhere to these kind of, you know, pre-existing structures that exist, nothing will shift. So so I just wanted to thank you again. And I think yeah, very complimentary ideas. And, you know, for me, I'm hoping that, you know, this space is going to keep growing, and that, you know, hearing other people's perspectives about it, I think is also where we need to be heading, because I think we're all brave in the sense of using our voices and trying to speak up. And I think as women, that's another thing that, you know, we need to keep doing and not let that die. It's really, really important. And part of that is telling our own stories. So thank you guys. Thank you both.
Thank you, Corinne, for that. And for the importance of speaking up as women. I think it's particularly hard. And you sparked one thought, that one word that I didn't mention, and maybe Camilla did, but I think it's a key quality, and that's empathy. You know, the power of empathy, communicating with empathy, and being able to relate to other people is really a very powerful quality of those kind of conversations. So thank you. Sorry, Maria.
No. I'm actually, I was thinking about what I was thinking before this meeting. I was actually, you Meredith, you used the word empathy, and I was actually thinking about that. And a few things you both, I mean, thank you. Thank you again. I joined my other new friends to say thanks to your témoignage, testimony. How do you say testimony? So my point of view, I was thinking it's about human being. Actually, if we're talking about big societies or human resources or art, after all, what we look for in this new world we're looking at is finding again this conversation, that it's not made about words, but it's made about feeling each other and going even beyond words. And when you use the word empathy, to me, it's really something that we can't explain. And the thing I wanted to share with you, just because it's a very particular, my presence. I wanted to share with you something. It's about women. It's about communication. It's about trying to communicate in a different way. And this thing I'm sharing with you, it's a prologue of a little word. I'm very, very. It's so emotional, actually, knowing you're so far away. It's a prologue of a little project I've done inspired by the myth of Atalante en français. It's a symbol of a very powerful woman who's actually doesn't look for the power, and doesn't want to take the man's place, but just want to express her female point of view and her empathy and her courage without any preconcept. It's a very pure character. And I have a little thing. I don't know how you're going to listen to that. I'm going to hear that, because this is a kalimba, and Atalante, it's for you. It's to celebrate the power of women, and so I dedicate this to all the women, wonderful faces I see, and your intelligence. The pride of a man kills, pride kills, sex kills, love kills. If I were an eagle, I'd be king and proud. You remember me, I was here years ago. Another millennium passing by. We were there as if we're not alive. We were bright, speechless still. We couldn't move or sing or pray. We were not enough. Our gods drank our blood. And after you've gone, everybody stayed. Let me be, let my blood flow. Let me stay alive. Let me go. Atalanta, Atalante, outland, out of my heart. Voilà, that's for you. Pride.
Wow.
Proud,
Wow.
brave, new women.
Wow.
I love that.
Beautiful.
you.
I love that.
It was just to actually to celebrate this thing we have, that it's our, I think it's our power. I listened to you was so inspiring, because no matter what we talk about, when we are women, we have something that it's about sensitivity. It's about it's about empathy. I think you actually used the perfect word, Meredith. Thank you very much, because it's just about that, what we're going
Thank
to follow.
you, Mariella.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I've heard you sing on, a number of occasions, and every time it's just such a gift. So thank you.
Grazie, grazie. It's very bizarre with this distance. We need to be back to feel people. I just wanted to share this little thing we actually shared with Cecilia in therapy, in a group of therapy. When somebody new were coming into this group, we had a ritual. That it was not the new person didn't present herself, introduce herself with. It was just silent. We were just looking at this person, and I don't know, maybe projecting things on this person. I don't know. We usually had the intuition, a very deep intuition, and usually people were like amazed, because they had in front of them a bunch of people that never saw them and knew already a lot of things. So I think we forgot what's the meaning of looking at another human being and trying to feel. And I think that's the key, and that's the key you're proposing in very difficult environments where this is very hard to be accepted. For the artist, it's easier.
Vanessa, I see you've got your hand up.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Nordberg, and I own a company in New York, Metal Mafia. And
Vanessa, can you put your video on, or is it not possible?
no, actually, it's not. The internet here is not strong enough, and I'm
Right.
afraid you won't be able to hear my voice. So
Okay,
you'll have to imagine me. Sorry for the moment. But I just wanted to share the idea that I think the choice of words of empathy versus emotional is very important in forwarding women's perspective in the workplace. So I own the company that I work for, and it's always been a feminine thinking company in the sense that we show empathy, and that's not a weakness. But I think that there's a dialogue, especially in the United States market, for women to always be pegged as emotional. And in fact, women do it to themselves as well. And I think that that's really important, because I can't tell you how many emails I get inviting me to join women's groups on a regular basis, where we're going to either learn how to manage our emotions in the workplace, or we're going to learn how to manage up, for example, or we're going to make new friends and things like that. And those words don't touch me. They don't make me want to join, and they don't make me want to show up, because I feel like they're compartmentalizing and handicapping women. Whereas I think that women actually come from a point of power and strength, in that we do have this empathy that potentially is, more present in women than in men in many occasions, not all. And that, that's something that, being a woman-run company, for example, it's a good thing, not a bad thing, not an Achilles heel at all. And I think that it's important to change that dialogue and to really use that kind of descriptive word, especially right now, given that people are talking all the time about the importance of emotional intelligence. And what is your emotional intelligence IQ and things like that. And it's becoming quite a buzzword. And I think that that's just another option and opportunity for women to really jump on that, sort of publicity that's happening already, and create more strength for women in the workplace and women owners as well, related to that.
I wonder if we should be calling it the empathy IQ instead of the emotional.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean,
That's
emotional
right.
IQ it's fine, but I just feel like it's more about empathy. And I think that, that was the right word to choose for it. And so, if we can all, as women, help propagate that word in the world and in the workplace, I think that, it'd be a better place for all of us.
Thanks, Vanessa.
I think that's a great point. Thank you.
Demet, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my own reactions and my reflections. Thank you, Cecilia, for holding this wonderful platform for us. And starting with, let's put it this way. First of all, seeing Maria Laura, your voice and the song was beautiful. I had goosebumps all of a sudden, instantly in the first minute also. And that also reminded me the impact of feelings and the impact of songs and music and art, those sort of things into the feelings. And if we don't bring our feelings into the conversation, which is two different type of relationships, how do we hold the humanity, right? So I really believe in the strength of that, and thank you for doing that so beautifully. Your voice has a big impact. I love that. And me personally, Meredith, what you were talking about, the organizational transformation, I had a big personal transformation after 30 years of corporate life. And I gave up at the end of the day that this organization will not change. So I decided to change my own path. But whatever you have been saying in terms of partnerships, relationships before tasks, and listening with a curious mind, and these all have been my own personal learnings. And it's so beautiful to hear that what you have been doing at the organizational level, because this is exactly what the organizations need. And I wish I don't do any sort of a business or job around that, but I wish I could contribute to what you are also doing at that level. And thank you for having that. So these are my small remarks, and thanks and many hugs to all of you, hopefully in a more certain way. Thank you,
Thank
Cecilia.
you.
This is my reflection.
It's actually just after 7. I'm happy to stay on, but if people need to go, please, jump off.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can just stay on. I feel as though there's still things that need to be said. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to, any reactions, anything they'd like to contribute? Yes, Sarah? Do you pull?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Corinne was responsible for inviting me to this amazing group, and I'm honored to be here. I started to feel climate change under my feet in 1984, and I panicked. Sorry, talk about empathy or emotion. I landed in the Amazon, working there. And I've also been to a couple of the COPs, COP 20 and 21. And I'm very interested, Camilla, too, as you were saying, it's a huge group. And it's like when you go there, it's so overwhelming and you're running around. And I'm very interested to see what happened at COP 23 with that new type of that communication. What was the effect of that? And I think when you're working in such a complex system, that I can see how it becomes rigid because they have so much to do that, it's almost like they don't have time to hear everyone's story. So I'm curious how it worked in such a huge venue or an initiative at the COP. And how can we, moving forward, I'm already thinking about COP 26, which is this fall and a very, very important COP. How can we accelerate storytelling? I'm a storyteller as well. I'm a filmmaker, but how do you accelerate that concept in these huge spaces like that, where there's so much happening?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, for COP 23, which was the Pacific COP or the Fijian COP, that's where they introduced it as a formal process for the global stock take. So how to take stock of ambition, really, of the different countries. And the global stock take won't officially start until 2023. So maybe they'll do something similar. Maybe we'll yet to see. Hopefully, I mean, if Fiji has managed to create a legacy of some kind in shaping the way that negotiations are held, that would be wonderful. And to a format that would be more suitable to share in that sense. Yet to see, though. As far as the results that came out of the 2017 to 2018, so this went on for a year. It was discussed how much it could influence. Obviously, it comes down to each and every individual country's level of ambition to reduce emissions. And even though, some said, no, it didn't really do much. We're still way up there. And it hasn't been formalized in any way. But what we've seen from other examples, from a South African example called the Indaba, the meeting form, which was introduced in, was that? I don't know, I can't remember the year, but quite a few years ago, which is this South African concept of meeting style. And they use that again at the last COP to try to get, no, when was that? In 2015, they used Indaba again as a sort of a meeting style to get the results that they were needed. So, maybe the Talanoa dialogue will become in future as a format, maybe not for the whole thing. I don't think so. I mean, it's a way too big of a system, and you're right. It has to be in a certain way. Often when it's this big, you can't sort of flip the whole thing around. That would also not benefit very many other, countries that are having difficulties. But yeah, I think it's yet to see, and I think it's I really like using the Talanoa dialogue as an ongoing example for something. It did change the way that people communicated together, and that was within that big system. And maybe just making others, or in the negotiation and the different parties, to rethink how they might get to solutions outside of that format that has been so for so long. I think there's definitely something valuable there, and I hope that maybe we can see that in the future, coming to 2023, when I really get down to business.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I love, Maria, what you saying. Thank you. So beautiful. It not only gave me chills, but it made me cry. So
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's really touching to be so far away and to be able to get to your heart. It's an honor. Thank you very much. Grazie.
What I'm hearing through all of this is that the word that keeps coming to me is creativity, and I think that it's coming from both what Meredith and Camilla said and from Maria Laura's singing, and I think that they've complemented each other, beautifully. And I'm thinking about this a lot at the moment, about how when we're in our survival mode, our flight or fight mode, then we're surviving. We're not actually able to be proactive. But as soon as we can flip into our creative mode and into a different part of our brains, then suddenly we become proactive. And I think that's what all of you were bringing, is that when we're in that other part of our brain, then we're able to see solutions, and we're able to invent solutions, and we're able to connect with other people. We're able to be in contact with our feelings. And I just feel like that more all of us can be developing that creative side of our brains, the more we'll be in contact with other people. I just wanted to give an example of being in a corporate situation where emotion was completely denied. There was, in my company, there was a woman who went with her husband to celebrate her 40th birthday, and they went walking in the Alps, and she tripped on a stone, and it was a very mild accident, but she tripped, and she actually went over the edge of the cliff, and she killed herself. And she was very pretty. She was just a really calm, lovely, beautiful person. And obviously everyone in the department was terribly shocked about it. And the management thought that it would be a good idea not to do anything and not to have any sort of public occasion, because people might cry. And so I actually sent them an email and said, there's a lot of emotion here. It's got to be expressed. And so they eventually did have a minute of silence, and it was very powerful. But I think that's an example of how the emotions are there, and by ignoring them, you know, you can't ignore them. They need to be acknowledged and they need to be spoken about. And yeah, it's part of who we are as humans. You know, when we're in international conferences, when we're in corporations, we don't stop being any less human. So I think it's just so important. We've gone over time. Has anyone else got anything that they really would love to say before we close? I don't want to shut people off.
I just wanted to thank you again, all of you, and I really look forward to, like I said, building this community of women, because I think we can all learn a lot from one another. And the goal, you know, for me, I'm inspired. I feel like I don't know if it's because of post-COVID or what, but I've been meditating on it, but I feel that I've been attracting a lot of amazing women into my space at the moment, and that feels really amazing, and a noticeable shift, and something that I really want to nurture and help move forward. So I'm here to support in any way possible, and I look forward to continuing to learn. Thank you.
And I might just quickly say how much I've enjoyed this as well. I'm a little bit emotional, not in a bad way. I've enjoyed the experience. I loved hearing Maria Loha and seeing my dear friend Camilla. So thank you, Cecilia.
Thanks, Jess. Well, I'd just like to say, first of all, thank you to Meredith, thank you to Camilla, thank you to Maria Lara. I think it's been, for me, it's been a very special time spending this with you. And I hope that there'll be many, many more. I hope this is just the beginning. Lots of thanks to Corinne, to Perdita, to Meredith, and also to Demet, who helped a lot in just, getting my ideas sorted out. And, any ideas are always welcome to see if we can make this bigger and better and more powerful. So thank you very much, all of you. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Thanks so much,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Cecilia.
Bye.
Grazie. Ciao, ciao.